Good afternoon. I'm Angelina Meets here with your news, sports, and weather updates to 12 o'clock. The Vancouver City Council will be voting on a plan to revamp Granville Street's entertainment district. Our reporter Riley Lyons has more.
The report from city staff was drafted back in December and outlines initiatives to improve the area. These include things like office spaces, better transit access, and a shift away from single-room occupancy hotels. The manager of Same Sun Hostels on Granville Street, Doug Venn, says the street is lacking its former reputation.
It doesn't have that same cachet it had maybe 10, 15 years ago as the entertainment district.
One project, the Granville 800 proposal, is underway, focusing on new retail and restaurant spaces. If the report passes today, city staff estimate it'll take about 18 months for the project to be completed. Riley Lyons, 1680 The Crow.
And we are now joined by our reporter Riley Lyons. Thanks for joining us, Riley. So what is the council's plan for the abundance of SROs?
So ever since the COVID pandemic, SROs, single-room occupancy hotels, have skyrocketed in Granville. Tons of them have showed up, and now Granville Street has the second most SROs in the city, right behind the downtown east side.
And why are people calling for this change?
So a lot of the councillors are citing that ever since the past over 10 to 15 years, the entertainment district in Granville has been lackluster. What they're trying to do is basically bring Vancouver up to the level of other major Canadian cities, basically making it so the entertainment district backs up our claims of being a major city in Canada.
Thanks, Riley. And another area that is getting a revamp is Chinatown. The Vancouver City Council unanimously voted to revamp that yesterday. Our reporter Asta Pandey-Kanan spoke with the CEO of a nonprofit headquartered in Chinatown who is hopeful that this action plan will bring change to the community.
Queenie Chu, CEO of Success Foundation, has worked closely with long-term residents and local businesses in Chinatown who've dealt with offensive graffiti and other race-based hate crimes. She says that the most crucial action to take is to ensure safety for everyone.
We got to make sure we're consistently educating people, making sure there is consequences to those offenders, and no one should be kind of letting it go and calling out those situations, that these are not acceptable.
Chu says she hasn't seen much change in the last 10 years and hopes the city is able to keep their word and work towards sustainable solutions for the long term. Asta Pandey-Kanan for 1680 The Crow.
And Vancouver Island University has accepted the return of an honorary doctorate of laws from former judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond. Turpel-Lafond was the subject of a CBC investigation last year into her claims of Indigenous heritage. The university says it will not comment further on the matter, but says it broadly condemns Indigenous identity fraud and is continuing to develop an Indigenous identity policy. And a landslide in Campbell River forced 2 condo buildings to evacuate last night. According to local officials, there were no injuries, and the area, though, is now secure. Our reporter Amelia Francis-Finsom learns more.
At approximately 7 p.m., police, firefighters, and emergency support services were called out to the 700 block on the South Island Highway to evacuate residents from their homes into the Campbell River Baptist Church. Erwin Harder, the director of facilities there, opened the doors to those who were displaced.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking because it's a lot of seniors that are in there. So it is hopefully the damage isn't as bad as what some people think it might be.
At 7 a.m. this morning, volunteers and emergency crew were back at the church to relocate the evacuees into more comfortable accommodations. Harder says the community of Campbell River is quick and caring when it comes to situations like this. The city of Campbell River issued the emergency alert via Alertable. Amelia Francis-Fincham, 1680 The Crow.
And there is a lack of snow on North Shore Mountains, which has led to the closure of certain areas. Our reporter Evan Smith has more on this.
Season ticket holders were optimistic for this year's ski and snowboard season due to a flurry of snow in late 2022. Despite a promising start, many locals have been experiencing icy conditions and at times, even bare runs. The provincial government released their latest snowpack bulletin detailing the changes seen. Snowpack on BC's coast is down significantly compared to last year, as it has dropped by 36%. Dr. John J. Clegg, a Shrum research professor at SFU, gives us insight into what may have led to this.
The base that operate from has decreased over time. And that's just a manifestation of climate change.
Although not over yet, a drastic turnaround is needed to salvage the Vancouver ski and snowboard season. Evan Smith, 1680, The Crow.
And when reports came in that they were threatening to derail a children's drag queen event this weekend, supporters of drag queen Connie Smudge came out in full force. Our reporter Gurpreet Cambo has the story.
The unstoppable Connie Smudge lived up to her namesake today. Dozens of supporters came out to Waterfront Station in response to reports of protest against her event at the Coquitlam Public Library. They all rode the SkyTrain to the event together in a victory march. Here's one supporter, Sheldon Ely, who showed up in full drag.
Dress and a hat, that's all it is. It's a Value Village find. It's very important for me to be open to who we all are, to show love, and very important to show that we support everybody in our community. They need some love from gay people.
The group of about 60 rode the SkyTrain to the event together, singing songs the whole way. They were met by hundreds more supporters there, and a few dozen protesters. Gurpreet Kambo, 1680, The Crow.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he's going to focus on the working class when Parliament sessions return later this month. Singh says he knows what it's like to be able not to afford to put food on the table and stresses that the working class needs to be protected.
Because workers are the backbone of our country and they deserve respect. If you work a job in this country, you shouldn't go hungry.
Singh says other priorities he has is expanding dental care and working on a national pharmacare plan. And the iconic retail chain Zellers will be making its comeback in Canada. The first 25 locations were revealed earlier today. Back in August, Hudson's Bay announced the plans to revive the company. 4 locations out of the 25 will be in BC, with one planned to be in Surrey, one downtown, one in Abbotsford, and one in Kamloops. Lawyers of 2 Saskatchewan women who have spent nearly 30 years in prison are continuing to argue today for their release. They are currently awaiting the result of a federal conviction review, and outside the courtroom, one sister, Odela Cusans, says she believes there will be a good outcome.
There could have been more support, but I'm grateful for what I have now with people here. And my team wouldn't be here if they didn't believe we were innocent. So I'm praying to be free so I can live my life now.
Odela, who turns 51 today, says she believes her time in prison and boarding school, she has spent most of her life confined. Canadian Defence Minister Anita Anand has announced Canada is sending 200 armed vehicles to help Ukrainian forces with the war. The vehicles are the latest in a series of military contributions from Canada to Ukraine since the invasion last year.
I want all Canadians to know that, as Minister Resnikov told me today, Ukraine is highly grateful for Canada's defense contributions to Ukraine, including heavy artillery, a NASAMS air defense system, the armored vehicles that I announced today as well.
Anand dodged questions, however, regarding whether Canada is prepared to respond to Ukraine's request for battle tanks. And a helicopter flying through the Ukrainian capital has crashed into a kindergarten, killing the country's interior minister along with about a dozen other people. Reporter Charles de Ledesma has the story.
Firefighters at the crash site comb through the debris, which includes a badly damaged kindergarten, clearing chunks of charred mangled wreckage lying against an apartment building and in the playground. Earlier, 4 bodies on the ground were covered by reflective sheets. Kyrylo Timoshenko, deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, tells reporters, "We're counting the children. Everyone understands the situation that has happened. Emotions are running high." Kiev Regional Governor Alexei Kuleba says emergency services are still identifying remains recovered and that the death toll could rise.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Starting in Vancouver, the Canucks look to add another win to the win column as they face off against the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight at home. The Canucks finished off their recent road trip with a record of 1-4, with the win coming in their most recent game over Carolina. Goalie Spencer Martin is expected to get the start for the Canucks against Tampa Bay's Andrei Valesky. And the NHL has released a statement today saying players are now free to decide which of their team's initiatives they want to support. The statement comes only 12 hours after Philadelphia Flyers defenseman Ivan Provorov refused to wear the team's pride jersey. Provorov didn't warm up with the team ahead of the game, stating that the jersey was against his religious beliefs.
I respect everybody. I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say.
An NHL spokesperson says the league will still continue to encourage players' voices and perspectives on social and cultural issues. In tennis news, Felix Auger-Aliassime rallied this morning to advance to the third round of the Australian Open. The young Canadian star had 23 aces and won 5 sets earlier today against Slovakia's Alex Molcan. And Denis Shapovalov was also a winner in his match as well and will go on to the next round. On the women's side, Canadian Bianca Andreescu could not do the same, though, as she fell to Spain's Cristina Buxa in 3 sets earlier this morning. In baseball news, Ashley Stephenson, a longtime Canadian player and coach, will now be behind the bench for the Vancouver Canadians Baseball Club. Stevenson spent 15 years playing on Canada's national team, helping them claim 3 bronze and 1 silver medal at the Women's Baseball World Cup. Last year, she became the first woman to coach at the Blue Jays Academy Canadian Futures Showcase in Ottawa. And BCIT intramurals kick off next week, and as reporter Sylvia Senna explores, some students are using it as a break from their workload.
BCIT students are signing up for the intramurals. Olivia Ives is on her last year and decided to join the league for the first time to take a deserved break from school.
I just think it's a really great way for people to go out and stay active, especially during all of the busyness that is BCIT, and it's just a great way to take a break from the school and just come together as a community and play.
BCIT intramurals happen during weeknights. Each season is approximately 10 weeks long with 1 game per week. Sylvia Senna, 1680 The Crow.
And glow-in-the-dark sports at BCIT are another way students are catching a break from their workload here. Reporter Maham Hashmi has more.
The BCIT Rec Center has welcomed back their famous Glow Week after a 3-year pause due to the pandemic. A week full of glow-in-the-dark sports and fitness activities attracted the attention of many BCIT students who signed up and filled all the time slots within days. Samuel Lucier, who is an active student at the Rec Center, expressed his excitement after the Glow volleyball game, which took place on Monday.
Glow Week is a great opportunity to, just give your brain a quick break from a heavy course load. It's a fun environment, so you get to meet some new people and enjoy the loud music and cool lights.
Glow-in-the-dark yoga, spin class, and Zumba are the other activities that will take place for the rest of the week. Maham Hashmi, 1680 The Crow.
And those were your news and sports updates to 12 o'clock. I'm Angelina Mintz, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. Now it's time for the comment.
You're listening to The Comment. I'm Ryan Bailey.
Canada's production of batteries for electric vehicles can shape the ethics of the automotive industry. It's an important issue as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau looks to further Canada's mining and battery production. The environmental benefits of EVs are obvious. No emissions, no oil, no gas. But whether or not Canada addresses the growing demand for batteries, these materials will continue to be sourced from somewhere else. According to Fleet Europe, the Democratic Republic of Congo represents 69% of the world's cobalt production. This is a place where working conditions and human rights violations are known to be egregiously bad. If Canada is going to increase its mining, it needs to be done with respect to not just the earth, but the communities it affects, specifically Indigenous communities. But what other options do we have to power our cars? Met Group Energy Company says we'll run out of fossil fuels in this century. Any technical development in this area needs to be done ethically and sustainably, and Canada's resources will be crucial in shaping the automotive market.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Crow Chronicles. I'm Abby.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Sebastian.
So this past weekend we went to the Vancouver Aquarium. I've only actually been there once before, and it was like way before COVID when they still had beluga whales and stuff. They don't have whales anymore, which is good or bad, whatever you think. But they have a stellar sea lion instead, which is cool.
It was my first time too. I love watching the jellyfish tank. That was really hypnotic to watch.
I also really enjoyed seeing the jellyfish and watching the sea lion show as well.
Did you guys know that the Vancouver Aquarium first opened back in 1956?
Yeah, so today we're talking about that moment in BC history, the opening of the Vancouver Aquarium.
Oh, yeah. So the way the aquarium got started, so talking about the 1950s, right? World War II was over. There's this kind of optimism in the U.S. and Canada. And a Vancouver insurance man, so he was a businessman, not a biologist, kept tropical saltwater fish at home as a hobby. Well, that was very hard to do in the 1950s, because you couldn't go out, if you were tropical saltwater fish, you had to have somebody had to go collect them in Fiji or Tonga or Australia and ship them to you. He believed that Vancouver, as a growing metropolis, needed an aquarium, because all the great cities had one: Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, and Vancouver didn't have an aquarium. So he said, well, Vancouver needs an aquarium. So he led a community movement to get an aquarium established. And that the trick to getting the aquarium established was that he convinced all three levels of government to put up $100,000 each if the other level of government would put up $100,000. And he was a very politically astute guy. And so he started with the Premier of BC, and the Premier said, sure, I'll do it, because the feds are never going to do it. And then he got the Mayor of Vancouver to say, who said the same thing, the feds will never do it. But he already knew that the feds would do it. And so the aquarium was built with that $300,000 and a lot of community support. and it opened on June 15th, 1956.
So that was John Nightingale, the second director of the Vancouver Aquarium who we spoke to. We learned that the Vancouver Aquarium is the oldest and the first public aquarium that opened in Canada, and it has become one of the 5 largest aquariums in North America.
It's huge, and it's located in one of the most iconic spots in Vancouver.
Yeah, did you know that Stanley Park wasn't actually the only location considered for the aquarium?
So Mayor Hume, who was the Vancouver mayor of the day, decided that's where it was going to be. That's not where anybody wanted it. The park board didn't want it there. Some of the city councilors didn't want it there. The aquarium didn't really want it there. But the mayor said that's where it's going. Because there used to be a zoo, a free zoo in Stanley Park, occupying the area up from what's now the train that runs at Christmas time and at Halloween down to the aquarium. There were zoo exhibits scattered around that landscape. And so the zoo was already there. So Mayor Hume said, well, this is kind of like a fishy piece of the zoo, put it in Stanley Park. He made the decision personally. Some people wanted it to go down by somewhere near where the Vancouver Museum is. And back then, Falls Creek, of course, was lumber mills. It was industrial. And somebody thought right at the end of right next to where the aquatic center is, sort of between the Burrard and it'd be just east of the Burrard Bridge.
The Vancouver Public Aquarium Association from UBC, founded in 1950, also had a role in the opening of the aquarium. We talked to Andrew Tribe, a marine mammal research unit professor at UBC, who shared the experience of one of the members of the association at the time.
They started it from thinking about needing access to do research where they could have saltwater tanks, a place to care for things. And I think that was combined. So I think certainly the research community from UBC was very central to that, but also with someone like Murray Newman, who also had his eye on the public and the need for public education. And I think it was a good combination. I think that probably also helped to steer the direction so that over the years that research was always one of the pillars of what they did. And animals were not there for one's entertainment, but to educate.
Oh, I had no idea about any of that. I wonder what the implications of the aquarium's opening had on tourism in Vancouver at the time.
That's a great question, Abby. It was definitely very busy when we visited over the weekend. John Nightingale said when the aquarium first opened, it was only the size of the tropics room, which is only a 9,000 square foot facility. I can't imagine the crowd when 10,000 people showed up for the opening weekend.
Well, it was highly anticipated, the opening. In fact, I have a good friend who's now in his 80s who was a child standing holding his mother's hand in that opening day lineup to get into the aquarium. They had 10,000 people on the first day went through the aquarium. It was a lot smaller than it is today. So it was right from the get-go, it was very publicly popular and helped put Vancouver on the map in a number of different ways.
When we went last Saturday, the place was packed with families. You could hear kids all by the different animals, especially during the Sea Lion show. We were really impressed by that too. The show wasn't only about tricks and jumps, it was also very educational. The hosts talk about the relationship that trainers and animals have and how important it is for making sure the animals are healthy.
Yeah, I really loved how centered the Vancouver Aquarium is around education. Besides the Sea Lion show, there were also many other opportunities to learn about marine life through displays and murals and pictures and interactive screens. It really seems as though this has been the aquarium's top priority since the beginning.
You don't need to be a diver to observe marine life, that they've recreated different habitats, different parts of the ocean, and you can see firsthand what's there. And so I think that's been a very important part. It's allowed people to see marine mammals up close and to learn about them in different ways. They were the first to bring a killer whale into captivity, and as a result, changed the world's attitudes and perception, understandings about killer whales, because people got to see them up close. Before that, everybody was terrified of them, and there were efforts even to remove them and to kill them because people were afraid of them. And now they are the mascots or heroes of the marine life here. So they played a role in changing public perceptions. And I think, the public, we tend to love and care for things that we know or that we've seen, and to be told that we should care about fish that we've never seen and can't relate to, or let's say a killer whale that we can't relate to, it's very difficult. But once people get to know them, and I think the aquarium provides a means to get to know marine life in a way that one cannot do by walking along a beach or looking out over the ocean.
I like that the Vancouver Aquarium tries to teach you when you visit instead of being like an amusement park. It also feels like other public aquariums across the province that opened up afterwards took inspiration from the Vancouver Aquarium too.
Toronto has Ripley's, whatever, believe it or not, and they've got something, and that was much later when that opened up. And then, then there's in Marineland, or is it what do they call it? Marineland, isn't it, in Niagara Falls, which I've never seen, but that one opened up. And I guess, when I think of these other two, I guess I've seen them being more as set up as a tourist destination. And I think one thing that the Vancouver Aquarium stood out for was, yes, it recognized that tourists would come, but it seemed to be designed to be part of the community and to be a community aquarium and to provide information, promote conservation of marine life, and show what we don't see under the surface. So I think that its approach wasn't private in the sense of making money. I think a big part of its mandate was education, promoting conservation, and ultimately supporting research as well. There are now some other community-based aquariums in British Columbia. So there's one in Ucluelet. They've got a small one up in Campbell River, and I know there's one in Seashelt as well, or Gibson's, I guess is where it is. And they're very, very cool because they're very small and it's very community-based, and but they're very neat.
After visiting the aquarium, I definitely realized that it's a really important place for education on marine life, on top of being a fun place to see all the fish and mammals up close. And I think this is especially important for BC because we're surrounded by water and marine life in nature. So as we spoke to John Nightingale, he also shared how the aquarium impacted him personally.
Academic training was as a scientist and happened to be with salmon. And part of that training in graduate school involved a lot of talking to the public and to school kids. And I came to understand that people are really interested in the oceans and nature, but a lot of people just don't have a pathway or they don't have the access. And so aquariums seem to me to be a pretty perfect way to engage ordinary people who just have an interest but don't have any background or any technical knowledge. So I've pretty much spent my whole career working in and out of aquariums and museums a little bit. And so I came to Vancouver on purpose when the original director announced his retirement. The aquarium at that point was 37 years old. He announced his retirement, so he'd been the director for a long time. That's a long time to hold the job. And so I came to Vancouver on purpose because of the Vancouver Aquarium. So it was a very significant part of my life, and it's a very significant part of what I believe we should be doing to combat climate change and loss of biodiversity and other things.
I really enjoy learning about the history of the aquarium. It gave me a new perspective on the role these places have when it comes to teaching to new generations about how crucial it is to taking care of animals that you have in front of you. And I think it's also crucial for researchers like Andrew and the Marine Mammal Research Institute team.
I can talk from my side, where we've done a lot of research with primarily sea lions and northern fur seals, and also harbor seals. And so it's been a collaborative effort where we have the ideas for what the research is, but then we need to have animal trainers that can help get the animals to do what's needed to do the research, because we can't collect any data from a sea lion that it doesn't want to do willingly. We can't force it. They're just too big, too strong. And plus, if you do force an animal, you're just going to stress it out, and then your data won't be of any use. So we have to be able to collect data in a way that the animal cooperates 100%, is completely relaxed, and that's where the trainers ensure that those are the conditions under which the animals participate. So at the same time, the aquarium doesn't have the expertise to do the research themselves, but we've got graduate students here, undergraduate students, and just such a depth of knowledge to run those sorts of things. So the university doesn't have the facilities to care for these animals, and so it worked out very well. And then the third aspect in here was the fact that the public got to hear about the research. They would understand why the animals were there, what we're learning from them, and what they're teaching us, and what we're taking back to the field to help conserve marine mammals in the wild.
What I learned was that the salmon plushies at the gift shop are only $20. I mean, that's such a steal. $20 for a salmon plushie? Come on. No, but really, what I learned was how lucky I was to grow up on the West Coast, where I saw a lot of those animals in the wild naturally, like, all the time. I also learned more about how the aquarium came to be and the 3 levels of government the original director, Murray Newman, had to go through to open it. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of The Crow Chronicles.
Be sure to follow BCIT Journalism on Twitter and BCIT News on Instagram.
I'm Abby.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Sebastian.
Bye!